All right, listeners, you're in for a treat today. We have another guest episode. Today, I'm here with Brooks Elms, and he is a screenwriter in Hollywood. He's written over 40 screenplays with a bunch of others in the works, as well as he's taught a bunch of students at UCLA Extension and facilitated some coaching and personal development. And he's here today because he has started working with supporting amateur writers, becoming pro, and turning their works into screenplays. So today we're going to talk a little bit about memoir and how it is potentially translatable into movies. You see examples like Wild, and we'll talk through a couple of things like that. Like, is your memoir a movie? Does it have potential? Or maybe your narrative fiction, is there potential there? What that looks like? And even how we can add elements of screenplay methodology of showing to our writing to help that process as well. So welcome, Brooks. So thankful that you were able to join us today for this.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here.
So why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about what written works make potentially good movies. What are some of the elements that a memoir or a story needs to have in order to make it a good movie?
So I think if you're talking about a movie with something that Hollywood is going to want to buy, like at the biggest level, you're really talking at this point, gigantic IP. So they're not even interested unless you have a cajillion books sold, right? That's at that level. But there's lots and lots of
And for people who don't know, what is IP?
Already proven creative material. So a franchise movie like Star Wars is intellectual property, and then it can be merchandise and it can be just built into other businesses or other movies. But if you look at the box office, the top box office movies from probably the last, 20 years, something like 95% of them are all intellectual property. So Barbie, the Barbie movie last year, right? Although Oppenheimer was not. Oppenheimer was, I think, completely original. I don't know, it wasn't based on a book or but generally they're based on best-selling book, a play, a toy, whatever, some 4 previous movies. Why? Because it's such an expensive endeavor to get people aware of a movie and excited, and to get them to come in and pay now a significant amount of money. We go see it in a theater, or even spend time to see it on streaming. That marketing becomes a really important part of the equation. And if they're already familiar with something, the marketing efficiency is significantly greater. So if they have to tell somebody about something and it's all new characters, all new world, all new whatever, that takes a lot more marketing energy, time, and money. And so Hollywood is completely in the IP game. It has been for a long time, and that's not changing. That's why you see a skillion superhero movies. And it's why you see variations on superhero movies that would have been like other movies, maybe in the 90s or 80s, but they just kind of cram them into, like Joker. It's not a movie about Joker, the character. It's really Todd Phillips telling a story of, it's a character study, but he kind of puts it into the DC universe so that it plays into the IP, so that now it can be a movie on a big scale and made $1 billion in the box office. So your memoir, a Hollywood movie, if it's a bestseller, there's a chance. If it's not, then it still could be a movie. It could be an independent movie. It could be something else. Streamers get involved, and they need so much product. There's a lot more variation there. The one thing I'll say that I think would be helpful for your audience is I started out kind of like a memoir storyteller. Well, when I first started out, I made movies with my friends, and we made very silly parodies. We made like a goofy Western, like a goofy, like gangster movie, and they were terrible. And delightful and really fun. And then I went to NYU Film School and we got very serious, very serious. It started making personal first. So I won a screenplay award for my senior thesis film at NYU, and it was based on things that happened to me the year previous. So I brought my college girlfriend home for the summer, and I loved her and I loved my best friends, but they didn't love each other. And so the following year, I turned that into a movie, and and it got well received. But and then I went at summer after I left NYU and made a feature film that was basically about my friends on the NYU soccer team. So memoir type stuff, right? Like nobody cares about the NYU soccer team. It's a Division III. We weren't great. We weren't terrible. It was like Dazed and Confused. It was a hangout film with my friends. So I loved it. And people that saw it was like, hey, this isn't half bad, but like almost nobody saw it. And that's the thing with memoir. It's like so important to you because you lived it. But like, to what extent are you tapping into what's true to you and true to somebody else? So I learned that transition significantly in my own career. There's an inflection point when I'd written a bunch of sort of memoir type. I mean, in the independent film or screenwriting version of it is just like person and drama, right? And so I'd written a bunch of stuff that was like that, but I loved, and that was good for what it was, good character development. But Hollywood was not all over me. And a producer came to me and was like, look, I like your stuff, but like write me a genre movie, dude. I can't do anything with your personal dramas, but like if you write me a genre movie, I can help you. And I was like, oh, I don't write genre. And then I was at that meeting with another producer friend of mine that we walked away, and I basically, in storytelling terms, I refused the call. Call to adventure was like, hey, I can get you to the next level of your adventure. Write me a genre movie. And I refused the call. I go, no, not me. I can't do that. I'm an artiste. I do personal drama. And my producer was like, dude, he's been offering you a job. What are you doing, man? Write a fucking genre. And I was like, oh, yeah, that like, he's right. Like, why am I pushing away opportunity? So then I, with a bite of humble pie, started thinking more broadly. And there are some genre movies I actually do like. I don't like the bad ones, but I love the good ones. So why don't I just write a good genre movie that has the personal characters? And that is the ticket really for you. So that, by the way, then got me signed by the best agent in Hollywood, and I started actually being able to sell scripts, right? Because I started doing things. I did what I liked in the personal drama space, but I did them in a way that a big audience can relate to, right? Because they can relate to. So I started. So specifically, the actual project that kind of broke me through was an alien invasion. So, but it plays out in a very grounded way with very real characters, and all plays out like a shooter event or like a terrorist attack, and then it scales up. But it's actually full on, an invasion. So they loved it, and that. So if you can do memoir tapped into intellectual property, if you could do memoir that's elevated in some sort of genre, if it's actually, Larry Smith in Kentucky and his story about whatever, oops, it has to be told in such a way but again, like you could tell that story and an independent producer might be like, I love that story, and then make it for, I don't know, $100,000, 500,000, 500,000 or whatever. And it could be a beautiful indie film or whatever. So like you have options, but like, here's the last thing I'll say is you just want to keep in mind that like the audience size will grow when you tell stories in primary colors, right?
Mm.
And like the core genres, thriller, comedy, action, horror. If you can tell a memoir story within those primary genres, the audience size grows. If it's just personal drama, it's fine, but it's a tiny, narrow audience. And if you're doing memoir, like maybe you don't even need an audience at all. Like maybe there's so much personal growth value from just writing down your thoughts. Maybe you don't even want to be professional. And that's totally fine. Like, it's a great way to spend your time and organize your thoughts and be part of the journey. But if you've done that, you're like, no, like this is more than just journaling for me. I want to journal for me and journals for an audience. Like that's really what you're doing as a professional. You're telling your own story and your audience's story at the same time. And just be clear, like you might not really be at that level where you really want to tell somebody else's story. Like just telling your own story is enough for you. And that's fine. The problem is when you, like I was talking to this one woman, this one friend, it's kind of heartbreaking that she was still working through a lot of stuff. And she kept thinking that she had this material that was ready for like professional storytelling. And I was trying to help her. Like, I don't think so. Like, I think you just want to work through this stuff on your own, because the difference is like we go through life is life. So there's real trauma and challenge and whatever in everybody's lives. And memoir is a wonderful way to make sense of it. And that is an ends in itself. And if you can do that and be comfortable with it, and you want to then play a whole other game on top of that by recrafting it or whatever in a way that's totally true to you, but in service to somebody else, that's a professional thing. And it's different. And she wasn't ready to do that. She wasn't at all generous. She just felt so deeply about her own thing. And I mean, she was literally on a conversation with me, like crying. I was like, my friend, like, no, you're not. Just because you feel it deeply yourself doesn't mean other people are going to feel it. There's a generosity and a curiosity that drives professional storytelling. And it's not better than or less than, it's just different. But it's really important that you get it clear. Like if you can't even have a conversation with somebody without breaking into tears because this thing is you're so tender about the subject, you're not ready to tell a personal story about it. Because professional storytelling is just iterating. Like you don't care. Like I'll try this, I'll try this, and try this. Because you're dancing with the audience. You want to make sure you're playing to the ones that are like, "Ooh, I love that." Okay, and then you find the nexus between what's true to you and true to them, and that takes a lot of iteration to get right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like a theme I've been talking to a couple other people about. I know we'll have some other podcast guests that come on and talk about this. And it's also something that just I've seen come up at a recent writers conference. And it's this idea that like, yes, there's so much personal healing that happens and goes on as you're working on your memoir, but that doesn't mean that you have to keep your stories in a traditional memoir form, right? So you may find that a different medium is the better source of expressing those emotions or those struggles or that growth, whether you need to fictionalize the story in order to feel comfortable sharing it, whether it would play better as some kind of, documentary or fictionalized movie, screenplay. We've had a guest come on and she talks about her one-woman show, her monologue that she wrote. And I've seen other memoirists who took the very gut-wrenching process of writing memoir and took individual threads from that and then used that as their motivation and their inspiration for poetry. So there's so many valid forms of telling our personal stories and embedding them into other creative works, right? And, you see this all the time with fiction writers. They're constantly pulling from either their own personal experiences or they model a character after like one of their parents or their best friend or whatever. And if you know that person, that author personally, you can see, those threads of like, oh, you borrowed this from this local townsperson and I see your inspiration for that. We pull inspiration from, our personal lives all the time. And that's really, it's also helpful in expressing these stories and potentially making them more broadly, viable or interesting. And that's something that I talk a lot about in the memoir course that I help people work through is from the beginning, figuring out what is the problem that your memoir is providing a solution to. that is a problem that you can solve for everyone, meaning that it's not something that's reliant on external resources, because not everyone's going to have the same resources that you had. But what is that sort of intrinsic problem that you were able to, do a reframing of, a perspective shift, a new belief that you can guide your reader through so that they can access and solve the same problem with their own resources? Because we have to make sure. Go ahead.
I love that. And I think that it's really powerful, and it might help structure things for your community. What's that big life problem? How did you try to deal with it the wrong way? Lying to yourself, being selfish in some way, self-limiting beliefs, and slowly, painfully realize that way wasn't actually getting it done. And then you learned a better way. So from my own personal example, my dad wasn't around in the way that I wanted him to as a kid. And at one point my family actually split up. And so that was the conflict, where I was an 8-year-old kid. Dad was not living with my mom and sister anymore. New school, new place. The wrong way to handle it, quote, wrong way, which was the best I could do at 8. It's made sense of it was, I'm not good enough. I'm not really worthy of my dad being in my life. I need to now prove myself. I need to fill this hole. Like, all this stuff it's reasonable that a kid would create those ideas, but those are all limiting beliefs. And I was very much a good boy and not really directly dealing with the grief or the anger. So all these sort of like ways I dealt with it the best I could were not really helpful ways to do it, but that was the best I could do. So there was the conflict, and those were the wrong ways to deal with conflict. And then slowly, through trial and error, I was like, this wasn't working. And then I came fully around, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I am actually working. Maybe I don't have to try to prove myself, and maybe I blah, 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 blah. And that's really what a beautiful memoir can do. But only when you're clear. And that woman that I was talking to before as an example, like, there was none of that awareness. She basically just was hung up on like a past relationship. Like, she already remarried and was hung up on a past relationship and how this guy betrayed her. And there was no ownership. There was no, I did this thing that was challenging and I got over it. It was just, she was still reeling from, really, in my mind, she was seeing herself as a victim and hadn't yet overcome it. And so she, I thought the best thing for her was personal work and maybe absolutely writing a memoir for herself about it. But the charge was intense. But it wasn't like, it wasn't the sort of thing that Hollywood was going to be knocking on her door for, because it was about her. And she wasn't in a place to be able to go, okay, this is how I felt. And it was like volcanic for me. How do I create it in a way that's also volcanic for the audience? That's great when you could be in a curious, generous place. And she just wasn't there yet. Then that's fine. It's only a problem if you're not there and you try to force it. By the way, sometimes, Hollywood gets a bad rap, and they deserve it because it's not personal enough. There's a vanilla quality to some Hollywood stuff. There's a generic quality, right? It's too similar to what we've already seen. There's too many cooks in the kitchen to water it down, and sometimes those movies are so popular or whatever, but like, what's beautiful about memoirs, you're starting from a singular vision. And the key is just your vision and then your audience's vision, finding your own voice.
Right. And what you describe, for me at least, when I hear your description of that woman's process, is that she was still writing an autobiography, which to me is a whole separate genre and different than memoir, because for me, the essence of memoir, what makes memoir a memoir, I don't care what the publishers stamp on a book and say that oh, this is so-and-so famous person's memoir, if it doesn't have a core message, if it doesn't have a misbelief, like you gave a beautiful example of from your own life, right? And you guide the reader through your stories, but you set the scene of how this misbelief was established and then how it was then validated through a number of life experiences until you started to get to the point where something caused you to test it, whether you saw, a mirror example of someone else having chose a different path and it made you wonder, oh, I wonder if that's true for me too. Maybe you dabble a little bit, maybe you have some wins, maybe some losses, like all of that. I use the Save the Cat beats to help people structure their memoirs so that they can show those various stories of the debates and the defeats and the little wins here and there and then the massive crash. But ultimately, you come into, you start act 1 with your misbelief and really setting up that premise. And then act 2 is a lot of the experimenting, maybe seeing some different examples that you try, some early wins, some losses. And then by act 3, then it's you're actually starting to really test this new belief of could this really be true? Could I really just be enough, as I am? And it's not based off of what I do for other people or what I accomplish, or maybe love doesn't mean I'm going to be abandoned, or, whatever that misbelief that you're overcoming in that story. And for me, and for, the coursework that I lead, that's absolutely a tenet of what I preach to people about writing their memoir, about being able to take a step back from their own connection to the story and really distill it down to the essence of this misbelief to new beliefs that they went on. And, in you sharing that experience with that woman, I feel like that's a beautiful example of the common trap that I see people get stuck in when they say that they're trying to write memoir, is that emotional attachment to the stories. And a lot of us have to start there, right? We have to do that work for ourselves to figure it out. But most of the time, those original versions of those stories stay on the cutting room floor, and we ultimately end up with an edited version that really does think about the reader first, right? And it is crafting the story for the reader's benefit, and so that the reader or the audience understands and goes on a journey. And while they may filter their journey through your various scenes that you show them, they're feeling themselves in the scene. They're recognizing the fact that, I turned to alcohol as a way to fit in and feel more relaxed in a, big social setting. They're also envisioning themselves in the ways that they may have done that and used either alcohol or other substances or humor or whatever else to put on a mask in order to feel like they belong somewhere.
Yeah, it reminded me of this wonderful thing I heard Alanis Morissette, the musician, say. She said that when she, writes a song, the first draft is a journal entry. It's exactly how she feels and her lyrics or whatever. And then she, records it and puts it out. And then she said, now it belongs to the audience. And I believed her. The way that she said it, there was a real simplicity. It wasn't sometimes these celebrities say stuff, they don't really mean it. But I felt like there was a real genuineness about how, just when I hear a great song, I feel like my song, but I love this song. This might be my song. You might even say it that way. And that was how she saw it. She's like, no, these songs that I've done that are popular, people these are, they don't belong to me. That's it. It originated from me. A higher power came through me or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And she said, when a song's rolling, it's I just barely work here. She's blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden she sings it. And what she's doing, my interpretation of her process is, when she takes that memoir experience, whatever, and then through her voice expresses it in a way that speaks to the audience's acoustic experience of her personal thing. And when she hits it in the right way, boom, and then all of a sudden she's right. She vocalized her personal drama in a way that other people felt it spoke to their own personal drama. It's beautiful.
Mm.
There's another example from music that like Paul McCartney tells a story where he, one of the Beatles, if anyone didn't know who Paul McCartney is, woke up one day and he's humming this song, and he was like, "Yeah, I get this song stuck in my head." He's like, "Who did this song?" He called up his friend. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I haven't heard that song. Like, what? No, this is so familiar. It's like, what? And called up another friend. After like 3 or 4 friends, he's like, "Oh, I guess I created this." Like, or like came through me. It was like yesterday. It was like one of his best songs ever. Literally, this came to him whole cloth, as if he had already heard it from somebody, and it was so good he couldn't get it out of his head. And now he just went to the thing. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. Like what we really have a light touch openness to like something bigger than ourselves. And we are just like the prism point comes from God knows where, whooped through us onto the page, and then in service to that audience. It's beautiful. And we don't get stuck on me. It's just, oh, this is just this. Oh no, it's like, no, it's like this. It's precisely like this. Like that. And then we know when the audience flips out for it that we actually were able to reduce enough friction so that it really is in service to them and their life, and we've taught them things about themselves, or we've shown them things in themselves that they're always there, that they weren't able to make that connection until they saw our part.
Exactly. And it not to say that that process of the me isn't going to be a part of the process. It absolutely is a part of the memoir writing process, but you don't stop there, right? Like you keep going at it, you keep revisiting it, you keep editing it until the vengeance is no longer
the way
there.
The way I would say
retribution.
the way I would say it, the professional, it's me. Like, I don't want to pretend it's not me, because it is me. I am the filter that I need to work with, but it's me with a light touch. And to know that, like, there's lots of parts of me. There's the more popular part of me. There's a more idiosyncratic part of me. And like, what do I care? As long as I create something through me that also serves my audience, that's the game of the professional. When we're just doing it to do it, then it really is just me in the echo chamber and making sense of stuff. And even the professional has that sort of early, like Alanis Morissette said, she first writes to the journal. It's really just for her. And maybe some stuff, I'm sure, never gets past that journal for her. So we definitely have to kind of go, what's going on? Why am I obsessed with this thought? Like, what is going on? So that's when we want that sort of inner echo chamber just to kind of make sense of it. And if we never get past that phase with a particular idea, all right, cool. But if something thunders through us, and it feels like it's just bigger than us, like we're speaking anthemically for us and our audience, that's the realm of the professional artist. I was thinking of Mario Puzo, who wrote The Godfather. And supposedly, like when he came up with that line, make him an offer he can't refuse, supposedly he saw this is an iconic line. Like it came to him supposedly in a way of like, it's really interesting. And we all have those times where you just have a feel for iconography, right? Something that's like, boom. And then something that's idiosyncratic. It's like, oh, just listen to a quirky thing that I do about. And so when you write professional, you want to train yourself to become more sensitive to things that are iconic, not cliche, just iconic, anthemic, ways that you're speaking on behalf of the audience in ways they can't do for themselves because it hasn't come through your prism.
So I wonder in these last few minutes if you have any insights as a screenplay writer of how us as novel writers could impart a little bit more of like that screenplay element, that movie playing in our reader's mind, a little bit more of the showing aspect versus the telling. What are just 1 or 2 things that you think really amplify that like kind of movie quality of a story, even if it's in just written form?
The actionable tool that might be most helpful for your community thinking about show versus tell is, what does it look like with the sound off? So if you were watching a movie, no sound, or you were watching something outside your window across the street, what are the visual cues you would see that would tell you, that would show you what's going on? So for example, let's say it's a couple arguing. I'm looking at them out my window so I can't hear anything, but we gesticulated the pearl, lips and face and the jagged like thing, and the other character like even like trembling and like backing up, and then coming back together, and like there's if you think of the blocking of it, you think of the chaos energy of what those two figures are doing and how one maybe dominates. And like, if you just speak to what you see and you can't hear, well, maybe you even hear a murmur of it because it's so loud that they're shouting at each other. And maybe there's a prop one uses, jabs a thing. If you have like, was silly, they have a banana or whatever. But like, then you start, and the reason, like, why even bother show versus tell? And the reason is, it sits more deeply in our psyche when it's visually potent. An idea is up here. The visual cues land more like in the heart, in a deeper place in the psyche. So if you tell me, yeah, I got in this fight with, I got in a fight with my spouse or whatever, blah. But if I see that fight outside the window, it's more immediate. And when a story is expressed in a way that's more immediate, it lands a deeper emotional blow. And when we land a deeper emotional blow, we're more deeply in service because we're teaching them a lesson about whatever the conflict is. So there's the hero, there's the goal and the conflict. And when we can express that visually and speak to what we're seeing, not necessarily what they're saying. And by the way, even when you talk about what they say, it's never about what they say. So if you're writing a love story, the last thing you do is have a character say, I love you. It's like the old joke between New York and LA. In LA, they say hello, but they mean F you. In New York, they say F you, but they mean hello. Right? And that's subtext, right? That's subtext. And so even when you're writing dialogue in your memoir or whatever, like, it's what they're doing, it's how they're behaving. And then the dialogue often contrasts that, or something totally different, or really interesting, the way they would, maybe down, like something massive happens and it's like a little word, or something tiny happens and they use massive words, right? But you're looking for contrast because that's how humans really speak a lot of times. So the takeaway is, see if you can write the blocking, the props, the visual cues without any sound. And then if you do dialogue, look for contrast in text and subtext.
That is such great advice. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm definitely gonna put that up somewhere around my computer just to remind me, like, what does it look like with the sound off? What does it look like with the sound off? Because I do think that encourages you as a writer to really dig into like the small visual cues and things of what's happening around. So thank you, Brooks, for being here with us today. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. We will have all of Brooks's contact information in the show description. Please subscribe to this podcast. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you like. Share it with a friend, someone who you think might have some screenwriting potential, or even just need some additional inspiration when it comes to writing their personal stories. So again, thank you for being here with us, Brooks.
Thank you for having me.